Joining us now from Leeds is Labour's Richard Burgon, a member of Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet. Good evening, Richard Burgon.
Evening, Kirsty. How are you doing?
First of all, what proportion of GDP will the total tax take be by the end of the Parliament based on the manifesto today?
Well, first of all, what I'd say is your colleague Chris was right in saying that we should be talking about the bigger picture. This document I've got here that you referred to in your package sets out exactly the total cost, £48.6 billion of our spending, and exactly how we will raise it.
We know about the big picture, but we want to talk about some specifics. We want to talk about some specifics. I wonder if you know what proportion of GDP the total tax take will be based on the manifesto today. What proportion will that be?
Well, I think what we need to talk about here is, if you let me finish, if that's OK.
Well, I'm asking a question to which you don't appear to have the reply.
I understand your technique, but it seems to me that we are being put on trial for daring to suggest higher public spending, put on trial for daring to set out with greater transparency than any other party has put forward before about how much we're going to spend and how we're going to spend it. You, I presume, have read the document and it's all in there. Yeah. We've got a choice with this interview. We can either do the rather tedious thing of going through each number that's in this document,
it's about
or we can talk about,
or
we can talk about the bigger picture. We can talk about, for example,
let me reassure you, we are going to go through some of the specific policies in a minute. I just wonder if you had any idea what proportion of GDP the total tax take will be at the end of this Parliament. Just to tell you, in case you don't know, it's going to be 36%. Do you know relatively how high that is from any other government since the war?
Well, the key point is this. When it comes to it, we made a pledge on tax that I think your viewers were very interested in, that 95% of people, i.e. everyone who gets paid less than £80,000, won't pay a single penny more in taxation, because Labour is the party of low tax for the many. The Conservatives, sadly, in the last 7 years, have proven themselves to be the party of low tax only for the privileged few.
Let's look at that. Just to tell you that there hasn't been such a high tax take as a proportion of GDP since 1949. So that is pretty eye-catching. Another eye-catching announcement today in the manifesto was that you're going to introduce an excessive pay levy on salaries above 330,000, another one at £500,000. Why call it excessive? Is that a moral judgment?
Well, I do think that the levels of inequality in this society are very great. The average earnings in the constituency I represent are £18,000, and I think it's right that Labour's saying there'll be no secret tax rises or sneaky tax ruses, but 95% of people won't pay an extra penny of tax. Remember that the Conservatives promised that there'd be no national insurance increase, and it was only Labour stopping them doing that through the back door that stopped them doing it on the sly.
So this isn't just this. Basically, what excessive means is, unnecessary, too high. So basically, you believe that people earning over 330,000, be they entrepreneurs, be they computer whizzes, be they CEOs,
TV
are actually
presenters, anybody,
are actually earning too much. You think they're earning too much?
Well, why can't we talk about in these interviews the many, not the few? Your question so far is focused on the few, about people that earn over £300,000. That's about 0.3% of society. Let's expand this conversation and talk about the 95%.
Well, let's talk about that. Well, let's move on to one of your other major announcements today, and that is on scrapping tuition fees. Now, you'll understand that people can be quite sceptical when it comes to people saying there'll be no tuition fees, but you've said that you'll say that you'll scrap them. So when would a Labour government scrap them? Would a student starting this September not pay tuition fees?
Well, I think that you saw how enthusiastically this policy was received by students today and across the country.
But they want it to be delivered, and if it was delivered by a Labour government, would it be delivered immediately? Would it be incremental? Would students that are actually at university now in second year not pay? When would you be introducing this policy?
Well, we'll reveal the further details of our plans in due course over the next 3 weeks. But I think what is true is that it's been widely welcomed, and the difference between Jeremy Corbyn and people like Nick Clegg, if anybody remembers him, is that Jeremy Corbyn is a politician who's always kept his promises and kept by his word.
You've just said, and that's absolutely clear, that we'll know more detail in 3 weeks. So we will know the detail of tuition fees and how they're going to be scrapped within 3 weeks.
We'll be making further announcements about the details of our policy. But it seems to me here that we are being put on trial for agreeing to more
You're announcing
public
policy.
investments.
You're announcing policy.
And we've announced a great list of policies today.
Of which this is one. Of which is a key one, and of which you're spending a lot of money on.
And we make no apologies for spending a lot of money on it, because it's fully costed, and it will stop students and people who want to be students from being held back. So there's too many people and families held back in this country, and this manifesto will change that.
It's about fairness, and I absolutely see that you're being absolutely categoric about that. Would you suggest then, if you announce in 3 weeks' time that you can't abolish tuition fees for, say, 2 years if a Labour government gets in, would you suggest that students delay going to university until your policy is in place?
Well, I mean, obviously this is some kind of trap. At the end of the day, I hope you would join students across the country and people who are thinking about being students, welcoming this policy as a massive step forward. And it is a massive step forward, just as is ending the scrapping or reversing the scrapping of the student nurse bursaries, bringing back the education maintenance allowance. What this is about is stopping people's aspirations from being held back. People feel they're being priced out of going to university. A Labour government will end that. And as I say, the difference is between Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour team, and, for example, the Liberal Democrats, who you mentioned earlier, is that the Labour team and Jeremy Corbyn have a track record of keeping their word. If only the Liberal Democrats did.
You're introducing sweeping changes in childcare. You're going to say there's free school meals. There'll be no tuition fees. These essentially are free benefits for the very people that you say earn £330,000 and excess. They're going to benefit from that. That actually is a terrible inconsistency, isn't it?
We all benefit from that. We all benefit from people going to university. Their education helps to stimulate the economy. If you're treated in hospital, you're treated by someone that's gone to university, whether it be a doctor or a nurse. If you go and see a lawyer, you're being assisted by somebody who's been to university. And, for example, our policy of free school meals, some people have criticised it for its universalism. I'm proud of its universalism.
Well, on that question of universalism and whether that's going to benefit you, Len McCluskey, the Secretary of Newsnight, told Politico that if the party holds 200 seats, that will mean this has been a successful campaign. Is he one of the so-called moderate doommongers?
Well, Len McCluskey is a great General Secretary. I'm delighted that he was re-elected recently. But all I'm focusing on, and all the Labour team is focusing on, is getting out these policies for the many, not the few.
But is he right about that it would be a successful campaign if you take 200 seats?
Well, the polls have narrowed. We hope they will continue to narrow. I believe they will when people consider the policies in these manifesto. And we want to win this general election. They say a week's a long time in politics. There's 3 weeks to go. 3 weeks is an even longer time in the politics. We're up for the fight, and we're up to winning this election in order to completely transform things so things are run in the interest of the many, not the few.
Thank you very much.
And so we end the system being rigged against people and families.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard Burgon.
Thank you.